Whispers from the well. Ethan and his family moved to a secluded countryside house, far from the bustling city. The house is old, its wooden walls creaking under the weight of time, but the surrounding yard is vast, filled with towering trees and thick greenery. It seems like the perfect escape from the noise of urban life. As Ethan explores the property, he notices an old well in the middle of the yard. The well is covered with a heavy stone slab, its edges worn smooth by years of exposure. Strange symbols are etched around its circumference, their meanings lost to time. Ethan runs his fingers over them, feeling a strange sensation crawl up his spine. His parents pay little attention to the well, dismissing it as just another relic of the past. But as Ethan stands near it, an unsettling feeling washes over him, a sense of being watched, of something lurking just beyond the veil of the ordinary. He shakes off the unease and walks away, unaware that this is only the beginning. A few nights after moving in, Ethan begins hearing strange noises outside. At first, he thinks it's just the wind rustling through the trees or some nocturnal animal moving in the darkness. But as the nights pass, the sounds become more distinct. Whispers, hushed and unintelligible, seeping through the walls of his room. One night, unable to ignore it any longer, Ethan gets out of bed and approaches the window. The moon casts a pale glow over the yard, illuminating the old well. His breath catches in his throat as he notices a shadowy figure standing beside it. The figure moves slowly, circling the well in an eerily deliberate manner. Ethan watches, frozen, as the shadow suddenly stops and turns its head. Though he can't see any features, he feels an undeniable sense that it's looking directly at him. Heart pounding, he stumbles back from the window, his pulse ringing in his ears. The next morning, he tells his parents about the figure, but they dismiss it as a trick of the light or an overactive imagination. Ethan isn't so sure, and deep down, he knows this is just the beginning. Ethan can't shake the feeling that something is wrong with the well. The whispers at night continue, and the shadowy figure lingers in his mind. Determined to find out more, he decides to examine the well in daylight. As he approaches, the carved symbols seem darker, almost burned into the stone. A cold breeze brushes against his skin, sending a shiver down his spine. Taking a deep breath, he grips the heavy stone cover and pushes with all his strength. It takes several tries, but eventually, the slab shifts, revealing the well's dark interior. Peering inside, he expects to see the bottom, but all he finds is an endless black void. He picks up a small rock and drops it in. Seconds pass, longer than they should. No sound, no impact, just silence. A sudden gust of icy wind rushes up from the well, hitting him like a wave. Ethan stumbles back, his breath visible in the air despite the warm afternoon. A deep, uneasy feeling settles in his chest. That night, his dreams are filled with darkness, and in that darkness, something is watching, waiting. The uneasy feeling lingers in Ethan's mind. He knows there's something wrong with the well, but he has no idea what. Desperate for answers, he decides to visit Mr. Holloway, an old man who lives nearby and has been in the area for decades. When Ethan mentions the well, Mr. Holloway's expression darkens. He grips his cane tighter and exhales heavily, as if weighing whether to speak. Finally, he says, "That well should have never been opened." Ethan leans in, his pulse quickening. Mr. Holloway tells him that 50 years ago, a family lived in that house, just like his. Strange things started happening after they disturbed the well. Objects moved on their own. Shadows crept along the walls at night. And then, one by one, the family members disappeared. The last thing anyone saw, Mr. Holloway says in a hushed tone, was a figure standing by the well, just staring down into it. A chill crawls up Ethan's spine. He wants to believe it's just an old man's story, a ghost tale meant to scare him. But deep inside, he knows it's more than that. Something in that well is real, and it's awake. That night, Ethan is jolted awake by a piercing scream. His heart pounds as he sits up, struggling to make sense of what he just heard. The sound wasn't from inside the house. It came from outside, from the yard. Swallowing his fear, he hesitantly walks to the window and pulls back the curtain. His breath catches in his throat. A figure stands beside the well again, just like before. But this time, it isn't just standing there. It's leaning over the edge, peering inside. Ethan watches in horror as the figure slowly straightens, tilting its head as if listening to something from within the well. Then, without warning, it vanishes, gone in the blink of an eye. A cold sweat breaks across Ethan's skin. He should wake his parents. He should turn away, but instead, he stays frozen, eyes locked on the well. And then softly, so faint it almost seems like his imagination, he hears it, a voice whispering his name from inside the well. Ethan stumbles back from the window, his breath coming in short gasps. The whispering voice still echoes in his mind. He barely sleeps that night, his thoughts consumed by the well and whatever lurks inside it. The next morning, he tells his parents everything. The figure, the scream, the voice calling his name. But just like before, they dismiss it. His mother insists he's just exhausted from the move, while his father jokes that he's been watching too many horror movies. Frustrated, Ethan turns to his younger brother Noah. At first, Noah doesn't say much, just listens with wide eyes. But then, his face pales, and he mutters, "I saw it too." Ethan's blood runs cold. "What do you mean?" Noah hesitates before whispering, "Yesterday, when I was playing in the yard, I saw someone standing by the well. They didn't move. They just stood there, watching me." A heavy silence fills the room. For the first time, Ethan's parents look concerned, but still, they try to brush it off. Maybe it was just a shadow. Maybe Noah imagined it. Ethan knows better. Something is wrong with that well. And now, his family is beginning to see it too. Ethan's parents remain skeptical, but he can see the unease in their eyes. Noah refuses to play outside anymore, and the once peaceful yard now feels suffocating, tainted by an unseen presence. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan makes a bold decision. He's going to look inside the well again. This time, he won't just peek. He needs to see how deep it really goes. Armed with a flashlight, he steps outside. The afternoon sun does little to warm the air around the well. The closer he gets, the colder it feels. His hands tremble as he grips the heavy stone cover and pushes it aside. The gaping void stares back at him, an abyss of endless black. He clicks on the flashlight and points it downward. The beam barely penetrates the darkness. The well seems deeper than it should be, far deeper than any normal structure. Then something catches his eye, a glint of metal. Squinting, he realizes there's something wedged between the cracks of the well's interior wall. An object, half buried in shadow. Without thinking, he reaches in, straining his fingers toward it. A sudden gust of freezing air erupts from the well, extinguishing his flashlight. And then, a hand grabs his wrist. Ethan jerks back with a scream, stumbling away from the well. His wrist burns with an icy chill, but when he looks down, there's nothing there. No marks, no wounds. Just the lingering sensation of cold fingers gripping him. Panicked, he rushes inside and tells his family what happened. This time, his parents don't brush it off. His father, though skeptical, sees the fear in Ethan's eyes. His mother grips Noah protectively, her expression unreadable. That night, unable to sleep, Ethan searches online for anything about the well. After hours of digging, he finds something chilling. A reference to a sealed well in the area, tied to an ancient ritual. The article describes how, decades ago, locals believed the well was a gateway, a passage not meant to be opened. His hands tremble as he reads further. The well was sealed to prevent something from returning. A ritual was performed to trap it inside. The symbols carved around the well weren't decorative. They were meant to contain whatever lurked below. Ethan's stomach tightens. He remembers the heavy stone cover, the strange symbols. He had moved it. He had broken the seal. A sudden noise makes him jump. A whisper. But this time, it's not outside. It's inside the house. Ethan freezes, his breath caught in his throat. The whisper isn't coming from outside. It's inside the room. Slowly, he turns his head. The shadows in the corner seem darker, heavier, shifting unnaturally. His pulse pounds as he hears it again, a faint, distorted voice, whispering his name. A sudden thud echoes through the house, then another. Footsteps dragging across the wooden floor. Ethan stumbles backward, his shaking hands clutching the desk. The air grows thick, suffocating, as if something unseen is pressing against his chest. Then Noah screams. Ethan bolts from his room, nearly crashing into his parents as they rush toward Noah's room. They burst inside to find him curled in the corner, eyes wide with terror. "The shadow," Noah gasps. It was in here. It was standing next to my bed." Their father turns on the lights, scanning the room. Nothing. But the air feels wrong. Heavy, charged with something unseen. Ethan knows this isn't just in their heads. They've let something out. And it's no longer confined to the well. It's inside the house. The house no longer feels safe. Shadows stretch unnaturally along the walls. Whispers slither through the air, and the temperature drops without warning. Ethan's parents, now fully convinced, decide they need help. Desperate, they contact an old folklore researcher, Dr. Alden Graves, who specializes in ancient rituals and supernatural lore. When he arrives, his expression darkens the moment he steps inside. "You've disturbed something that should have remained sealed," Dr. Graves mutters. "This entity, it was never meant to return." Ethan's heart pounds as Dr. Graves examines the well, tracing the worn symbols with his fingers. The original ritual bound it here, but when the seal was broken, it began feeding on your fear, growing stronger. "Can we stop it?" Ethan's mother asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Graves hesitates. "There's only one way. The ritual must be performed again, but this time, someone must go down into the well to place a new sigil deep within its depths." The thought sends ice through Ethan's veins. But before they can decide who will do it, a sudden deafening scream erupts from inside the house. Noah is missing. The whispers grow louder. the shadows begin to move, and the well is no longer empty.